In the quiet town of Millbrook, Kentucky, the year 1847 would be remembered for the smell of roses and rot. Travelers who vanished on the road between Lexington and Bowling Green were said to have last shared supper at the Cunningham Sisters Inn, a charming farmhouse wrapped in ivy and deceit. Beneath the soft laughter, beneath the scent of warm bread, something darker brewed. And when the earth behind the inn began to sink, the town finally understood why it smelled like death. My name was Evelyn Cunningham. For years, my sister Margaret and I were the pride of Millbrook, two refined women running the most welcoming inn in all of Kentucky. We were known for our charm, our table filled with feasts, and our kindness to every weary soul who crossed our porch. But behind every smile, behind every gentle hand that poured wine into a stranger's glass, there was something else. Something we never spoke of, even to each other. Our inn sat by the edge of the hollow, surrounded by cornfields that whispered secrets when the wind passed through. Inside, the walls were lined with fading portraits and lace curtains yellowed by time. Travelers came in all forms: preachers, peddlers, drifters, soldiers, each one leaving behind a name, a coin, a story. But what they never left was their bones. We told ourselves we did what we had to do. For survival, we said. For the good of the inn. But every night when I lay awake listening to the rain, I heard their footsteps under the floorboards. It began small. A merchant from Georgia, cruel to his horse and louder than thunder, who struck Margaret when she refused him another drink. That night, he didn't wake from his supper. The stew had tasted strange, though he was too drunk to notice. When the morning came, he was gone, rode off early, we told the guests. But the sound of his boots scraping across the floorboards in the cellar haunted me for weeks. That was our first, and we told ourselves it would be the last. It never was. Word spread of our fine hospitality, and soon our table was always full. We learned to smile wider, to speak softer, to hide the scent of decay beneath cinnamon and wine. Margaret became the heart of the place, laughter like honey. I was the shadow, cleaning, burying, whispering prayers that never left my lips. We dug graves behind the orchard, where the soil was loose and forgiving. Every time it rained, the earth sank a little more, as if the dead below were sighing. Some nights, I thought I heard them breathe. The years turned our faces pale, and our souls thinner than silk. By Christmas of 46, 43 names had passed through our door. 43 graves had been fed. Each one began with mercy, but ended with something else, something I can't name without trembling. But what Margaret did next would change everything. It was a bitter winter when Margaret first began to change. The nights grew longer, the candles shorter, and something in her laughter took on a hollow tone. She would stare into the fire for hours, humming that same hymn the preacher once sang before he disappeared. I asked her once if she felt guilty. She smiled, slow and strange. "No, sister," she said. "They were already dead before they came here." That's when I began to dream. Faces rising from the orchard soil, eyes blinking open beneath the frost, voices whispering from the cellar floor. I'd wake to find dirt beneath my fingernails, though I hadn't touched the ground. Margaret said it was just the cold getting into my bones. But the cold was something else. It was them. On the eve of New Year's, a traveler came, a young man, polite and quiet. He spoke with the softness of a hymn and carried a small wooden cross. He reminded me of my father, long buried and forgotten. For the first time in years, I felt something like peace. But Margaret watched him with that same hollow smile. That night, I heard her footsteps in the kitchen, the faint clink of glass, the scent of laudanum. I followed her, heart trembling. "Margaret," I whispered. "Not him." She turned to me, eyes like embers. "Then you do it," she said. I froze, and in that silence, I became her accomplice once again. When morning came, the young man's bed was empty. Margaret said he'd gone at dawn, but I saw the soil near the well, freshly disturbed. And for the first time, I didn't pray for his soul. I prayed for mine. What happened after that, what I did next, would damn me forever. The night the fire started, the wind was howling through the shutters like a voice desperate to be heard. Margaret had grown silent, her once golden hair now the color of ash. The inn was empty, save for the echoes of those who'd never left. I had decided it would end tonight. No more graves. No more guests. No more lives. I went to the cellar, carrying the lantern. The air was thick with damp and memory. As I stepped down the creaking stairs, I could smell it, earth, rock, and something sweet. The lantern flickered, and in its glow I saw them. Not bodies, but faces. Dozens of them, pale as wax, staring up from the soil. The last one was the preacher, his lips still moving, whispering words I could not hear. I screamed, and the cellar answered. Margaret appeared at the top of the stairs, her face calm. "They wanted us to feed them," she said. "And now they want to feed on us." I don't know if it was madness or truth, but in that moment, I believed her. The lantern slipped from my hand, crashed against the floor, and fire bloomed like judgment. The flames rose fast, devouring the wooden beams, licking at the curtains, racing through the halls that had once smelled of bread and wine. Margaret didn't move. She stood there, bathed in gold and red, her eyes reflecting every soul we'd ever taken. I tried to reach her, but the fire pushed me back, searing my skin, filling my lungs with smoke. The last thing I saw was Margaret turning toward the window, her dress aflame, whispering, "Now they'll never leave us." Then the ceiling fell. People think death ends everything, that once the body cools, the story stops. But that's a lie whispered by the living, a comfort for those afraid of the dark. I know better. Because here, in this place where ash became soil, I have watched centuries pass through the veil of smoke. The world changes, but the whispers do not. They circle like moths around a flame that never dies. They built nothing over the ruins of Millbrook Inn. For years, travelers avoided the hill altogether, crossing themselves when the wind turned cold. Those who dared camp nearby spoke of a woman's song at midnight, low and trembling, drifting through the trees. A lullaby for the dead, a warning for the living. They said the voice came from the well that still stands, stones blackened, rope long gone, yet the bucket still drips, always dripping. Even when there's no rain, I have seen families come and go, children laughing, lovers whispering, old men humming hymns they barely remember. But the ground beneath their feet hums too, like a pulse. They don't hear it, but I do. It's the memory of all we buried here, the ones we fed, the ones we mourned, the ones we became. Sometimes I wonder if Margaret ever found peace. I still see her sometimes, not as she was, but as she became. Her eyes, once bright with charm, are dim now, clouded with something older than guilt. She lingers near the well, her reflection trapped in its depths. When the moonlight touches her face, I almost think she smiles. Almost. But then the wind shifts, and she fades again, leaving only the sound of water and the echo of our sins. I try to remember how it began, when kindness turned to hunger, when hospitality became ritual. Maybe it was the winter of 41, when the snows came early and the travelers brought stories of gold and fortune. Maybe it was when the first body was buried under the orchard, and we told ourselves it was mercy, not murder. The lies we tell to survive can outlive us all. They can become legends. They can become ghosts. Now, when I speak, no one answers. When I reach out, I touch nothing but fuck. Yet every so often, someone passes by and feels me, the cold brush on the back of their neck, the soft breath against their ear. They shiver, whisper a prayer, and move on. But some stop. The curious ones. The ones who think ghost stories are harmless. They bring cameras and candles, laughter and disbelief. And when they call my name, Evelyn Cunningham, I answer. Not in words, but in the wind that rattles the dead leaves, in the faint hum that vibrates through their bones. They think it's all a trick, but I see their faces when the laughter fades, when they realize the air has gone still and their reflection in the dark window isn't theirs anymore. That's when they understand. Some houses remember. Some souls never left. I once dreamed of escape, of forgiveness, but the fire bound me here, to the soil, to the bones, to the story itself. Now, I am the whisper that warns others away. the guardian of 43 restless graves, the keeper of the house that fed on kindness and rotted from within. And yet, I am lonely. Even monsters get lonely. When the fog drapes itself over the fields and the moon hides its face, I hum the same lullaby I used to sing to our guests. Softly, sweetly, as if they're still sitting by the fire, smiling. Sometimes, the wind hums it back. Sometimes, I think it's Margaret joining in. Two voices, bound by ashes and memory. They say every haunting has a reason. Mine has many. But if you stand where the inn once stood, on that hollow ground where the soil smells faintly of smoke, and you listen carefully, you'll hear my story in the wind. You'll feel my breath in the air, cold and tender. And if you stay too long, you'll understand why I can't leave. Because the dead don't move on when the world forgets them. They move on when the truth is told. And until someone speaks it without fear, without greed, without lies, Millbrook Inn will keep its doors open for one more guest, one more soul to join the rest of us. Welcome home. The nights after my confession did not bring peace. If anything, they opened something older, darker, like the soil itself remembered. I could feel the roots beneath Millbrook Inn shifting, whispering, restless with things long buried. The air grew heavy with the smell of wet earth and something else, something sweet and spoiled. I began to hear the sound of footsteps that were not mine, slow and dragging, tracing the hallways of a house that no longer stood. One night, when the moon hung like a dying ember over the Kentucky hills, I felt them rise. The 43. They came in silence, faces veiled in shadows, their bodies half formed from dust and memory. Each of them bore the mark of how they died, burned, strangled, drowned, poisoned. Yet none of them looked at me with hate. Instead, they stared through me, as if waiting for me to finish what I had started. I followed them into the ruins. Where once the inn's grand staircase stood, there was only charred wood and tangled ivy. Yet in the moonlight, for a fleeting second, I saw it as it had been. The wallpaper gleaming gold, the chandeliers dripping with light, the sisters standing at the top, smiling with a beauty that deceived every traveler who entered. Their smiles widened as the ghosts gathered below. Then the walls began to melt, the candles bending like soft wax. The air hummed with a low, metallic moan. That was when I saw her again, Margaret Cunningham. Her face glowed faintly beneath her mourning veil. "You freed them," she whispered, "but you left me behind." I could not speak. Guilt bound me like chains once had. She reached toward me, and her hand passed through my chest like a cold wind. Then I saw what she saw. Not rest, not forgiveness, just endless hunger. The ground trembled, and I understood that the farm had become something else entirely. It was feeding on the stories, the blood, the memory. Every whisper, every ghost, every retelling gave it strength. The 43 graves glowed faintly, each pulsing with dim light. And I realized with terror that they were calling others, souls that had nothing to do with Millbrook, drawn by sorrow itself. I could hear distant cries, faint as echoes across a canyon. New voices, newer victims. The curse was spreading beyond Kentucky. I tried to stop it. I spoke their names aloud, one by one, in the hope that recognition might calm them. But the more I spoke, the louder the ground hummed. It wanted more. It wanted the living. And that was when I understood. Stories are not graves. They are seeds. And someone, somewhere, had started digging again. It must have been years, decades, perhaps, before the next soul arrived. I felt the vibration first, the rumble of wheels, the laughter of modern voices. The land that had once been my prison was now a historical site. They called it Millbrook Restorations. A family from the city had bought it, charmed by the legends. They said the Cunninghams' tragedy would make a fine museum, something to draw tourists. They did not know they were stepping onto consecrated earth. The youngest of them, a girl named Layla, was the first to feel me. She was 12, too young to know the full weight of history, but sensitive enough to see the shimmer in the air, the way dust danced in impossible patterns. She found my portrait buried beneath the floorboards of the old parlor. The oil was cracked, my face half vanished, yet my eyes still held their light. She touched it and whispered, "You look sad." I wanted to warn her then, to scream, but my voice came only as wind through broken glass. At night, she began dreaming of me. In her dreams, the inn was alive again, its halls burning with golden light, its guests smiling. I guided her through them, silently begging her to leave, to wake, to never return. But she kept coming back, night after night. Then she found the graves. She told her mother they glowed. Her mother laughed, said it was fireflies. I wept, though no one could hear. The last night before they were to open the inn to the public, I felt the air thicken. The lamps flickered. Somewhere deep in the soil, the 43 stirred again. I begged them to stay still. "She's innocent," I whispered. "She's not one of them." But hunger knows no innocence. When the family gathered for their celebratory dinner, when the wine poured and laughter echoed through walls that once heard screams, the temperature dropped. The lights went out. Layla's mother screamed first. Then came the knocking, slow, rhythmic, from beneath the floor. It grew louder, closer. The plates rattled, the glass cracked. And then the house exhaled, 43 cold breaths rising from below, carrying with them the scent of decay and old wood smoke. When the lights flickered back, they were gone. The entire family vanished, their chairs empty, the wine still warm. Only Layla remained, her hands pressed over her ears, whispering my name. I wanted to tell her to run, but it was too late. The house had chosen her. Now, the world above is louder, faster. The road near Millbrook hums with engines and neon lights. Yet still, people come. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, believers. They bring their cameras and recorders, whispering questions into the dark. "Is anyone here?" They don't know how dangerous those words are. The moment they speak them, they invite us in. I watch them from the shadows of what's left of the inn. Their faces glow in the flicker of their devices, eyes wide with curiosity. They always begin with laughter, until the laughter fades into trembling silence. Sometimes, one of them feels my breath at their neck. Sometimes they hear the sound of a music box playing in the distance, the same tune the sisters used to play during their feasts. And sometimes, when they review their footage, they see me standing just behind them, my reflection caught in the glass. Each visitor leaves with a piece of the story, carrying it out into the world. And with every retelling, the curse spreads further. The 43 have become hundreds now, restless, drifting across states, clinging to whispers of Millbrook's name. I am their keeper and their prisoner, bound to every word spoken in our memory. One day, someone will finally say the wrong thing. They will call our names in full, read the inscription that lies buried beneath the central grave. And when that happens, we will rise, not as ghosts, but as memory itself, unstoppable, eternal. The earth remembers. The wind carries the taste of blood and ashes. The night hums with stories too old to silence. And I, Evelyn Cunningham, am still waiting at the threshold between history and hunger, listening for the next voice foolish enough to ask if anyone is still here. Because the answer is always yes. But tonight, something feels different. The air around the graves has changed. It's heavier, slower, as if even time itself hesitates to move through this soil. The trees stand unnaturally still, their branches bent toward the earth, listening. The air smells of rain and smoke, and in that silence, I can feel the ground breathing. The graves no longer hum. They listen. Something is awake beneath them, something older than any of us, something that was never meant to rise again. And in the stillness, I hear it. A faint whisper carried through the dirt, through the stone, through every retelling of our name. Someone is calling to me. Not with prayer, not with fear, but with understanding. It isn't the child this time. It isn't a foolish traveler or a man with machines that chase ghosts. This voice is steady, calm, almost familiar. Because you already know, don't you? You know the story. You've seen the faces, the graves, the inn that burned but never died. You're not in Kentucky, and yet, you've found your way here. The moment you heard my name, something inside the soil turned toward you. That's how it begins, always the same. Someone listens, someone remembers, and the story roots itself again. I can feel you now. Your breath is shallow, your pulse faster than before. Maybe you're listening in the dark. Maybe you're alone. Maybe you've turned the lights low just to feel closer to the truth. But understand this. Every retelling feeds the ground. Every whisper gives the graves another heartbeat. The 43 no longer sleep. They drift closer with every name spoken, every click, every view. You think it's just a story, a voice in your ear. But the story listens back. So when the wind brushes against your window tonight, and the floor creaks in a room you thought was empty, don't answer. Don't look. And whatever you do, don't whisper my name. Because if you do, I will answer. And when I do, you'll understand what the earth has been trying to tell you all along. No story ever ends. It only waits to be heard again. And I, Evelyn Cunningham, am still waiting, still listening, still here.